All right, so as we talked about yesterday, Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk and Mike Figueredo from the Humanist Report got into it very heatedly. I think Kyle was more heated than Mike. I don't even think Mike was really heated. You could tell Kyle was angry, though, in their little Twitter argument that they got into. And it was over Joe Rogan because Mike was like, he was responding to Joe Rogan going on Alex Jones's show, and he was like, Joe Rogan's part of the problem, meaning that, he has a problem with this sort of platforming that he does. Now, Kyle made a video where he's basically responding to Mike. He doesn't mention him by name for obvious reasons, but you can tell what he's doing. I didn't find his response to be very, good. I feel like he's strawmanning a lot, and there's just not like a lot of addressing the real issues at hand. He kind of just deflects that to like other stuff, which is just straw manning, because he's not really addressing the criticism that exists. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you guys block footage of some of the stuff that he says. It'll be different, like clip parts, and we're going to come back and talk about those. Check this out.
Another example of self-marginalization, which happened yesterday, was Joe Rogan, who's been friends with Alex Jones since the 1990s, okay? And yes, Alex Jones is horrendously wrong about everything he says, and he's incredibly odious to the national dialogue. Okay, that's clear. But Rogan's been friends with him since the 1990s. They recently made up, and Rogan went on Alex Jones' show, because I guess he's doing some shows in Austin, Texas. So he was on there, and then people were posting the screen grabs and also saying, Rogan's part of the problem, Rogan is canceled. There were other people who were literally trying to say, Rogan is somewhat responsible for suicide from a Sandy Hook parent, because that Sandy Hook parent did it on the same day that Rogan went on Jones, and he was one of the people who was suing Jones. Therefore, Rogan communicating with Jones means he's kind of responsible, and how dare he? And the reality, everybody knows, Joe had no idea that that was happening. Joe had no idea that the guy probably did that, and also had no idea that he was one of the plaintiffs in the case against Alex Jones, and if you bring it up to Joe, I'm sure he would be mortified by this. So, but the point is, now, because Joe Rogan speaks to Alex Jones. By the way, he also speaks to Sam Harris. He also speaks to Jordan Peterson. People with beliefs that I think are totally wrong, and I debate them all day long on those beliefs. But because he speaks to those people, oh, well, now forget him too. He's excommunicated. He's to be shamed. He's to be morally condemned and pushed to the side. And listen, man, that's sloppy thinking. He also had on Abby Martin on his show. He also had me on his show. He also had Jimmy Dore on his show. He also had Andrew Yang on his show. He also had Tulsi Gabbard on his show. So should right-wingers look at Rogan when he has those people on and they go, fuck this guy, man. He's done. He's excommunicated. This is a childish way of thinking, man. In the real world, there are people who have shitty beliefs and odious beliefs. And to just excommunicate to make yourself feel better is preposterous. And you know what it reminds me of? Here's one of the final points I'll make on this. It reminds me of, remember when you used to take a math test and your teacher would say, you have to show your work. Like, what are you doing? Show your work. That's what this reminds me of. Because, okay, if you shame and condemn and excommunicate, what you're doing is say, you're an irredeemable deplorable, like Hillary said about many of Trump voters. But if you show your work and you say, hey, listen, Joe, I disagree with you massively on this, and here are the reasons why. Hey, listen, Glenn, I disagree with you massively on this, and here are the reasons why. If you show your work and you're making substantive rebuttals and debunking and counter-arguing, well then not only do I not disagree with you, I probably agree with you on many of your criticisms of Joe Rogan or even Glenn Greenwald. I have some disagreements with Glenn Greenwald. But there's this problem on social media where people are so insular in their own little tribal factions that all they want to do is like jerk each other off in their own corner about how right they are and how evil everybody is. And that's how we've gotten to the point where even somebody who you would agree with on most of the issues, you can find yourself saying stuff like, because of who they talk to, now they're part of the problem and they're excommunicated and they're to be shamed and morally condemned. And that's a problem. And you're actually only hurting yourself in that scenario. Because other people exist, other ideologies exist. There are nefarious actors out there, and we need to rebut them. We need to expand our sphere of influence, not shrink our sphere of influence. And in the case of a guy like Rogan, where yes, he has some genuinely shitty friends, and he talks to them, and that does give them more exposure. But if you take this approach of excommunication, then it's like, okay, look at it like, again, a math problem. So as of right now, you could say maybe 30% of his guests are left-leaning. Well, do you want 0% of his guests to be left-leaning? Do you want 10% of his guests to be left-leaning? Or would you rather have it more close to 50-50? Which, again, would require dialogue and would require debate and debunking and talking. And again, this isn't to say he's above criticism, because some people will inevitably come after me at that, oh my God, you have a soft spot for Rogan. Listen, go look at the podcast with him. Him and I debated on the issue of trans rights. Him and I debated on the issue of the voting age. There's plenty of issues where I disagree with Joe, and there's plenty of issues where I think his views are genuinely reactionary. And I'm willing to have those debates and those discussions. But that's just the point. I'm going to have those debates and discussions. I'm not going to shame. I'm not going to morally condemn. I'm not going to excommunicate. I'm not going to say you're part of the problem, whatever that means. And I'm not going to say because you have some friends who are odious and because you talk to those people, therefore, you're done. It's just it's really smug and it's really cheap and it achieves absolutely nothing, and it only marginalizes yourself more and makes it seem like, oh my God, see, the left can't respond, the left can't discuss, the left can't debate. All they have is clutching their blanket and clutching their pearls.
All right, so the first straw man here is that Mike Figueredo, or really anybody, was calling for the canceling of Joe Rogan. I don't think anyone was calling for the canceling of Joe Rogan, but we're still specifically talking about Mike here in their conversation. Mike was never advocating for canceling Joe Rogan. In fact, I didn't see anybody arguing for the canceling of Joe Rogan. That's just a massive straw man that doesn't make any sense, because no one was advocating for canceling Joe Rogan. And then he prefaced that whole thing by saying, well, people are trying to link the parent of the Sandy Hook victim who had taken his own life, and that's, linking them or something like that. No one was doing that either. Actually, that incident isn't really that's not the reason why you shouldn't be on Joe's show. That's just really like an indicator. You know what I'm saying? So he's already done all the garbage. There's a lawsuit going on right now. So there's no reason for you to go on his show. We all know his insane stuff, all of the harassment and, damage. There's tangible damage that has been done to the families of victims of Sandy Hook. So, there's no excuse for that whatsoever. And in fact, he says, I'm sure if he was told about it, he'd be mortified. Well, the story's out. You think Joe Rogan didn't see the story? Why hasn't he talked about it? Why hasn't he addressed Joe Rogan? Why hasn't he addressed the story? So that's actually even more, alarming. You know what I mean? That's even more alarming, because wow, you know about the story and all this and you haven't talked about it? Well, shoot, that's even worse. In fact, that's actually even worse. So, and then he talks about and starts listing off some of the lefty guests that Joe Rogan has brought on, those consisting of himself, Jimmy Dore, Abby Martin, Andrew Yang. And so he lists off these lefties, but the problem is that those lefties are brought on and there's a much smaller ratio. There's a much bigger ratio of right-wingers to left-wingers that come on the Joe Rogan Experience. So it's not a fair comparison to sort of just, list off these lefties that came on, which are a very small amount, and then, make it seem as if it's equal. Well, it's not equal, and that's one of the criticisms that we have, is that not only are you bringing on these really horrible people who don't deserve a platform, you're also being very non-even-handed and unfair in the distribution of your platform, because you're giving the majority of your platform to right-wingers, and that's not okay. Now, does that mean that we want to cancel Joe Rogan? Of course not. The answer to that is a solid no. That's just a straw man. No one said that they should cancel him. And there's also, not only is there the ratio issue, there's also a certain line to be drawn with certain people that you should simply not bring on your show. Now, who are some of those people, you may ask? The line you draw is with someone like Alex Jones. And remember, that's where this whole argument between Mike and Kyle and everyone else started, is that he went on Alex Jones' show. That's indefensible, by the way. That's indefensible, and that's the point of contention here, is that he should not be giving his platform to Jones, and he shouldn't be going on his show. That is unacceptable. Now, this isn't guilt by association. It's not a guilt by association fallacy. A guilt by association fallacy means that the person who goes on the platform is therefore guilty of the political opinions that are held by, Jones. So a guilt by association fallacy would be me saying Joe Rogan holds the same beliefs and crazy conspiracies as Alex Jones. That's not what I'm saying. This is strictly a conversation about the usage of Joe Rogan's platform, which is 100% different from guilt by association, has nothing to do with that whatsoever. We're talking about, you have a huge platform, you have a huge image, you should not be going on his show and giving that horrifying, disgusting garbage of a human being, your presence, as well as bringing him on your platform. That is irresponsible, and that is certainly a legitimate criticism to have. And anybody who disputes that, I don't know why you would. Honestly, I really don't understand how you could possibly do that. And then he talks about, debunk them and counter-argue them. Now, he's talking about both Joe Rogan and his guests. Now, we all criticize Joe Rogan when he says, dumb stuff. We always do that all the time. We will continue to do it, Same thing with his guests. But that's not the issue here. Are you seriously advocating for countering and debunking Alex Jones's crazy loony conspiracy? I mean, for the longest time, Kyle was talking about how he didn't debate people like Steven Crowder, and I guess rightfully so, that he was saying, like, would I debate a flat earther? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about countering people who are lunatics. Not just Alex Jones, mainly, which is where the criticism comes from. We're not going to start you think I'm going to take Alex Jones seriously? You think I'm going to give any sort of credence or validity to a discussion of his positions? No, he does not deserve the platform that he was given. And my understanding is, I thought this whole Sandy Hook thing was the reason why he wasn't coming on the show, the Joe Rogan Experience, in the first place. So why let him on afterwards? That's my question. It doesn't make any sense. So you want us to start arguing about these loony conspiracy theories? That's insane. I'm not going to stoop to that level. Fuck that. What is that? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to entertain debates about these, flat earth conspiracies and all this other, the government is putting chemical. Remember how Jimmy Dore has like that fluoride in the water thing? Alex has it on like 1,000 times more, which is even crazier. You think I'm going to start fucking debating that? Are you out of your mind, dude? No, of course not. It's insanely stupid. It doesn't make any sense. And then I'm going to conclude this by basically saying, because he keeps going to the point of like counter, debunk, blah, 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 right? Which we already do. If Joe Rogan says something, we counter it, we say our opinions already. We already do that. I don't know why he's saying that. But no one's arguing for him to be canceled. I want to make that very clear. But this is a strict debate about the usage and responsibility that comes with his platform. I think the saying is like, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what we have here, okay? You have to be responsible. You have inherited a serious responsibility with having this huge podcast, which is basically the biggest. I'm sure if you like, I'm pretty sure it's one of the top ones. I would say it's the number one, but maybe there are ones bigger. I can't, comprehend that, but maybe there are. When you have a platform like that and you're Joe Rogan and you go on Jones's show and have him on your podcast, that's not cool, bro. That's not cool. In fact, and we're going to criticize you for that because you should not have gave him your platform. I'm not saying Joe Rogan should be canceled. Mike wasn't saying Joe Rogan should be canceled. I don't even know anyone who was saying that. So this is like, I don't even get what Kyle is talking about. Like, dude, we already counter all the bullshit that's said by Joe Rogan and his other, crappy friends or whatever. We already do that. That already happens. But you have to draw the line at a certain point, and that line is Jones, okay? I'm not going to seriously entertain the garbage that he says. What the hell? No one does that because it doesn't make any sense. The guy thinks that the government's putting fluoride in the water to, like, I don't even know what it is. He thinks the government's making the frogs gay. You want me to start making videos about that? Debunking, countering that? What? Are you insane, dude? That's lunacy. Absolute lunacy. So, I don't know why Kyle continues to kind of strawman this situation. Again, let me repeat. No one's arguing for canceling Joe Rogan. No one's saying that we shouldn't counter or debunk Joe Rogan and his crappy friends' points. Also, nobody's saying that he should be excommunicated because he has right-wingers on. No one said that. And, we criticize because of the power of his platform that he has. And also, there's a non-equal distribution. And so there's this idea that Kyle has that, like, somehow if you were to, like, keep debating, you'll bring on people or something. I don't even know how that works. I mean, the only way to have more people on is through criticizing him for not having enough lefties on. Why doesn't Joe have on Richard Wolff? How do you not have Richard Wolff on your podcast? Noam Chomsky's harder to get, but Richard Wolff is real accessible. Why don't you have him on? So why don't you have more lefties on? Why don't you have Sam Cedar on? David Pakman, even someone who he knows, he's talked about it multiple times on his own podcast. Why haven't you had him on? So I just find this to be very baffling nonsense from Kyle. I don't know why he's dug this way, man. It doesn't make any sense.